All right, the work is still continuing. Granted, it's a little bit slower, but anybody that has really big aquariums in the 100+ gallon size knows full well these things are not easily moved by yourself. So today, I'm going to give you some more updates, what's happening, how we're getting to, where we're at today. Now, if you're as fascinated as I am by the incredible diversity of life that surrounds us in our wonderful and our natural world, then you truly belong here with me. I make videos on all facets of nature: aquariums, vivariums, DIY projects, reptiles, isopods, insects, and arachnids, all sorts of unique plants. And I try to do one thing: I try to make sure I dig a little bit deeper into the science behind it all. So if you haven't already, please consider hitting that subscribe button, as well as ringing that notification bell, and you'll always be kept up to date when I upload new content. All right, so here's where we're at now. I had my buddy Ray came over and help me today. A smart person would have set up the camera on a time lapse. I didn't think of that whatsoever. So the top 160 that was here, you'll notice, is not yet where it's supposed to be. Now there's some things that are happening, things are working. We got to it, we had one little snag. So the tank is actually sitting right here temporarily on one of the stands for the 160, and I'll tell you what's going to be going on, what's happening. So first step is, when we went to go and we had to move the tank to be able to get the styrofoam and the plywood out to be able to put it on the new stand. But apparently I glued the styrofoam down, so when we were putting it up here, it didn't move. And then underneath that, I also screwed the plywood to the stand. So to try and get the styrofoam up to be able to get to the screws wasn't really working. So basically, it's going to sit there temporarily. I'm going to go get a nice sheet of new styrofoam, which we're going to need for another project anyways, all the extras, so that's still a good win. And then I can rip all the styrofoam up. I might have to grab a sheet of plywood, and then we'll get it all set up, ready to go on the new stand over here. We'll get that one ready to go. The drains are now screwed to the wall. Everything's all mounted, ready to go. The passive drain system, you guys have seen that already. So that tank there, the 160 that we're talking about, I'll be able to probably move that myself, or my buddy Ray will probably come and help me, and we'll just move it over quickly and put it in there. These tanks are so overbuilt for their size. As I mentioned, like the glass thickness is way heavier than it needs to be for what its purpose is. But that tank's never going to break. It's never going to be a problem for me. It has no move whatsoever. So once it's in its place, it's going to be good. But I think while I've got it down here like that, maybe I'm going to do something cool with the backgrounds. And remember those backgrounds I showed you that I have from the 70-gallon tanks? Those ones that go inside the tank, the name is Universal Rocks. That's the name of them. Universal Rocks, I got 2 of them, and they're 4 foot. Now, I could buy a 6-foot one for this tank, but they're not readily available up here for where I am. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a 4 foot, install the 4 foot, and then around that filtering system, let me just switch around so I can show you what we're talking about. All right, so here's what we're talking about. I have 2 of these Universal Rocks. You can see how filthy it's covered in duckweed and whatnot. I got 2 of them, and they will fit perfectly in this tank. Now what I want to do is, because they fit perfectly in this tank, see, they're exactly the right dimension. They fit absolutely perfect. I'm going to, instead of using the earth magnets that come with it, I'm going to silicone it in place. Now the other one is also a 4-footer, and it's in that 70-gallon that is temporarily out there in the family room out there. You can see it right there. And there's one in that tank. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it or score it and see if I can bend it to make it nice and tight around this. So to cover from here to here, here back, and then here, and then join it up. Or the other thing we can do is we can move this one all the way down to the end to make it nice and tight, and then join the other piece over here, because this area of the tank, this is where the filter goes, that 15-gallon filter, the wet-dry filter. So this is very shadowed and dark, which might hide that seam a lot better. You could go and take once you've got some, it's all finished, you could easily put a bead of silicone up there and then cover it with some grit to something to kind of match the background, and that would really conceal it well. But for my purposes, let's just get the thing up and running, get it in there, get that cleaned up, and let's see if that project is a good idea and see if it'll work. I think it'll look super, super cool. And considering I'm not keeping the 2 70-gallon tanks, I think that's a great idea and a good reuse of something that I don't think I would get my money back if I tried selling it. I absolutely love these backgrounds. I like these ones here because they're flexible, so they work around different types of braces. They make all sorts of all different ledges and things that come out with a lot of relief and stuff. These ones give a real nice thing without losing any actual volume of your aquarium. I think they look absolutely awesome. Now the other things that have been happening is, but right beside where this tank is, this is where the planted tank was. And the planted tank is now sitting in the middle of the room, completely empty and dry. Now I drained it, I caught all the fish out of it. And you guys remember a video I did that there was a halt on project. Everything was at a stop because the Alto flavus actually had babies. And this is a very, very rare cichlid. But what I've noticed over the while, and I never even mentioned to anybody just because I've been so busy, and maybe it's the fact that there's just been so much chaos happening in the environment around their environment, but all the babies had disappeared. So I do no longer have the babies, but what we have done is we have moved the Alto flavus into a 15-gallon or 20-gallon long in the laundry room on the rack where the isopods used to be. You guys have seen that tank. And that I filled that tank with all the plants, all the extra plant life that I had. And then the Spinosystemus went to my dear friend Ray. And then out there in that room, all the Gadeids and all the swordtails, they went out there. And the Gava flareter, they went out there as well, all my breeders of my Gara. And one other thing that's already ready to go, but we got to wait because it's nice and easy to move, is this tank here. This whole rack is ready to go. The other tank that's missing is the P. regalis, the big Indian ornamental. That's going to go here, but I mentioned she's going to get rehoused because I have plans for both of the bigger enclosures for something different. It's not here yet, but it's coming. And then you'll notice that I have 2, 4, and I do actually have the other 2 for the bottom rack. They're just not finished. But these are the 4 that I did just recently with that video with the cork backgrounds and stuff that's came out. So that's the 4 of those. Those are ready to go. Next thing we're going to do, we'll have some fun, is we're going to go and get some, we'll go and hit my buddy up at the aficionados. We'll get a couple pieces of wood or something like that. And we'll set these up as nice, really slick looking, nice natural vivariums, bioactive. And we'll get them set up for some of the big female tarantulas. Have some fun doing that. Now this stuff is not easy to work with. It's all covered in stone and aggregate, and it's a poured resin on the other side. So we're going to have to be using some snips to try and cut through it, like we're going to be working almost with like sheet metal. And because we're going to be cutting literally through rock, I think it's going to probably not be very good for the snips as well. So we have several pairs here that we use on the farm, and we're going to have to use those. Now before I go and actually adhere this to the tank, we're going to have to clean this tank up dramatically because this is all algae from before when I let it ride. This will be all crystal clear, but you can feel it even feels a little bit rough. So that'll all have to be cleaned up before we go and adhere it. But let's do some of the measurements and start kind of cut to fit. We just need to know these 2 dimensions. So from there to there, we're looking at 7.5 inches. And from there to there, 7.5 inches. And then once we silicone it in place, I'm sure we can get some nice natural sand. And we'll put a little thin little bead of silicone, and then we'll cover it with some sand, and you'll never even notice it. There you can really kind of get an idea of what it's going to look like. We have to trim these down ever so slightly to make sure that the overflow box works properly. We don't want to block it off any further than we need to. And yes, because of a bit of the relief and the textures of the rock, there's going to be some unevenness areas. And so those ones there, we're going to have to fill in with a bit of silicone. So you can see these areas here. And most of them are noticeable that they're on the back, except for this one here, which we can easily conceal. Now before we can silicone, as I mentioned, I'm going to have to clean up this tank. So this is just straight reverse osmosis water that I use for watering my vivs. Give it a quick mist and it wiped off very, very quick and easy. Rinsed it down, wiped it off. It was good to go. Now for the backgrounds, I took them into our big shower because I had nowhere else to take them short of a car wash. Didn't want to risk adding any soap. And I scrubbed them down with a stiff bristle brush, rinsed them off, and then let them dry, and they were good to go as well. So I think it's about time. Get those backgrounds installed. See what the final image looks like. Now, if you're going to be doing this, a few tools that you're going to need. You need a caulking gun. You're going to need good quality 100% silicone, nothing with any arsenic added, so none of the ones that say number 2 or for bathroom or high moisture areas. You want pure silicone. Number 1, clear or black, it doesn't really matter. It's your preference. I got some styrofoam and I got a knife to be able to make little type of little dams to be able to push it up against the wall should I need. So let's put it on a time lapse and let's get started. I think we'll let that cure. And then all the loose stuff will just brush off. And the seam will disappear.